Be sure to follow us on TikTok at MysticSage1 for daily anime content. The Flame Hero, Endeavor. The current #1 hero in Japan, and father to one of UA's top hero hopefuls, Shoto Todoroki. While Endeavor has shown us all that he has the judgment and skills needed to be the #1 hero, we've seen consistently throughout the series that his heart and soul have held him back. His obsession with besting All Might and creating the perfect super child was very unhealthy to say the least. Unethical eugenic implications aside, he was basically a crazed madman that felt less like a hero and more like a person whose job just happened to require saving people, which is kind of what Stain was getting at. Endeavor, at his core, was the pure embodiment of a false hero. With that said, there definitely seems to be a large division among fans on whether or not he's redeemed himself, or if he could even be redeemed at all. Well, that's why I am here to give my take on the matter. I have to note though, in order for me to give a fully fleshed out take on this, I will have to get into manga spoilers. So if you're not caught up for the most part, and don't want to have old Mystic Sage here ruining it for you, then turn around now. However, if you are caught up or don't care about spoilers, then prepare yourself as we dive into the life of Endeavor. So, I think it's best to start off with Endeavor's origins. While we never really got too much backstory on his time at UA, or what drove him to becoming a hero in the first place, we do know what his main goal was. And that was to surpass All Might as the #1 hero and be the strongest. By age 20, just a few years out of high school, he had become the #2 hero. But despite being the only person actually trying to surpass All Might, he realized that it was just not something he could personally accomplish. This was definitely the starting line for Endeavor's descent into madness. Knowing his weak point was overheating and wishing to conceive a child who combined both fire and ice quirks, Enji sought out a quirk marriage to a woman named Rei Himura. Quirk marriages existed solely for the purpose of creating super children, and are extremely controversial, but despite this unethical proposal, she went through with the marriage for the sake of her family. The first child born to thermal opposites was Toya. Rei also wanted another child for the sake of the other having a companion, thus their daughter Fuyumi being born shortly after their son. Toya did not harbor an ice quirk like Endeavor had hoped for, but what he did have was a more powerful version of his own quirk dwelling within the boy. So they stopped there, and he began raising him up to be a hero. But not too long into their training, Toya started to get injured from using his quirk. It was determined that while Toya possessed a stronger fire quirk, his body was actually made to withstand freezing temperatures, making his body essentially incompatible. A visual example of this would be his hair changing from red to white. Although this has other implications that I'll touch on in a little bit. Endeavor attempted to stifle his son's ambitions of becoming a hero by ceasing his training. However, Toya was very stubborn and resolved to continue training on his own time. This is where things get really interesting, as Endeavor acts in a very kind and cruel way. He figures the only way to get Toya to stop hurting himself is to continue his pursuit of creating a child with both fire and ice quirks. It's cruel because it's stomping out the dream he gave his son, but at the same time, it does have its kindness to it, as he doesn't want to see his child get hurt anymore. I do want to say he doesn't get too many Father of the Year points for that, however, as he did create this child for the sole purpose of becoming a hero that could take the #1 spot away from All Might. So, time went on, and the two parents had 2 more children, Natsuo and finally Shoto. With the birth of his 4th child, he could finally have his dream of surpassing All Might realized while also protecting his eldest son. Or so he thought. This would end up backfiring on Enji, as all it did was light a larger fire underneath his son, who only wanted his respect and attention. You all pretty much know the story from here. Endeavor keeps Shoto separate from the other children to focus on training him. But the true reason Endeavor started that was from Toya's attempted assault on the infant, as the young child was very aware of his father's neglect towards him in favor of his newborn brother. Remember when I brought up Toya's hair earlier and how it changed from red to white? While this is more than likely caused as a side effect of his body's true nature of being built to handle ice instead of fire, the rapid change in color started when his father began neglecting him. Many, including myself, believe this rapid change may have also been induced from the stress of the burden Endeavor put on this poor child. He weeps as all he wants is for his father to notice him, completely broken. Years would pass by, and Toya would continue the train in secrecy, until he finally unlocked something within him that he felt would impress his father. This was not the case, as Enji could only see this harm done to his son's body. Seeing the disapproval in his father's eyes, Toya pleads his case for becoming a great hero so that he may finally earn his father's respect and have him be glad he created him, saying all of this as he cries and pulls at his hair. Now, this is the true climax of Endeavor's folly. He physically abuses his wife in front of his 5-year-old son, angry at her for not protecting their son while taking none of the responsibility himself. It's safe to bet this is where his physical abuse on his family started, which is just the icing on the cake, as he had already put most of them through mental turmoil at this point. But I suppose the cherry on top of all this was when his eldest son perished in a fire that burned it over 2,000 degrees Celsius, leaving only a fragment of his jaw behind. This event solidified Endeavor pouring his all in the Shoto, as being essentially responsible for his son's death was pure hell for him. So, time goes by, he continues his neglect towards all of his children, abuses his wife and youngest child, drives her to insanity, Shoto gets his scar, she gets sent to a psychiatric hospital, and now we're at the beginning of the series. Throughout the show, we see the results of everything mentioned above. But here's where things really start to hit the fan. During All Might's battle here with All For One in Kamino, he finally realizes what it took for All Might to be the #1 hero. It wasn't just the strength he possessed, it was the willingness to give everything for a cause. All Might's cause naturally being to become the symbol of peace, a pillar of light that would drown out the darkness and make everyone feel safe knowing that it's there. But once All Might retired and Endeavor was named the #1 hero, he quickly learned how heavy that burden was. His first true test was his battle against Hood. Despite having his detractors, Endeavor stood tall and put everything on the line to ease the nerves of the ones who were watching him. With that battle won, and with the public's opinion turning for the better, things started to seem to be going alright for Endeavor. The issue was that he couldn't ignore his past. Shoto still wants nothing to do with him other than using him for his own goals of becoming the hero that he wants to be, not the one his father wanted. Fuyumi tries her best to keep the peace, but both Natsuo and Shoto still have that hate in their heart for their father. These feelings have, along with his new responsibilities as the #1 hero, made Endeavor actually reflect on his actions for once. His whole reason for being a hero before was purely an egotistical one. But after having his back against the wall, he realized that his purpose of having unmatched strength now was for preserving a safe future for the younger generations. But he's now actually plagued by the thought of the futures that he's cut short, and that just asking for forgiveness isn't going to cut it. It's going to need to be actions that fixes things, not words. Fast forwarding a bit, we have Endeavor training Deku, Bakugo, and his son during their work study. During this time, a villain Endeavor defeated in the past, named Ending, shows up for a rematch, or more so an execution, as he wants Endeavor to take his life. His source of encouragement is by taking his son, Natsuo, hostage. With the aid of his 3 apprentices, Ending was swiftly defeated and Natsuo was saved. In this moment, Endeavor properly apologizes to Natsuo for everything that he's done to him and their family. He admits that he's always quick to blame others instead of taking responsibility for himself. And while he's not looking for forgiveness, he does want to atone for his sins. His solution to this is by buying a new house for all the Todorokis to live in once his wife is discharged from the hospital, while he stays alone in solitude at the current complex, as he doesn't want to intrude on the happy family his daughter wants to create. I have pretty mixed feelings on this, as I understand the sentiment, but it ultimately does still feel like he's running away from the problem. I know there isn't much he can do, but his daughter wants them all to be a happy family, and I think that picture includes Enji. However, the feelings of the rest of the family should matter. And if Endeavor being there causes a constant feeling of unease, then the only solution would be to remove himself. But nothing can really atone for the death of his eldest son, Toya. But wait, we only knew Toya's backstory because we're manga readers here. Toya isn't really dead. No. As it turns out, he survived the fire somehow, went into hiding for many years, and was reincarnated as the villain Dabi. Perhaps a fate worse than death, his son became a villain who has taken many innocent people's lives, and now has to deal with the consequences of creating him as well. During the Paranormal Liberation War, Endeavor became paralyzed at the sight of his eldest son facing the conflicting feelings of him still being alive but being a villain. Dabi revealed to the entire world Endeavor's history of abuse and unethical behavior, calling into question the way society looks up to people they deem heroes. Ironically, however, he was able to move again once Deku gave a very sports festival-like speech about how Endeavor may have been a bad guy in the past, but he's doing his best to atone for it now. While these words fall on deaf ears with Dabi, it gives Endeavor the strength to be a hero, helping the war come to an end with no true winner. The villains may have retreated, but the devastation done to Hero Society certainly made it feel more like the villains won more than anything. By the end of the war, the public is in total crisis mode as their loved ones have been injured or killed, villains have escaped prisons and are running rampant on everyone, with all of their outrage lying on Endeavor's shoulders. He cries as his heart has been weighed down with guilt and regrets, not knowing what to do. However, his family turns up and lets him know that he won't have to bear this burden alone, as they all have been bearing for far longer than he has. Once recovered, he participates in a press conference confirming everything Dabi said about his lineage was the truth. When confronted by a reporter who asks if he thinks just apologizing will fix his mistakes, he rhetorically asks, would shedding tears in front of her fix everything? The answer to that, naturally, is that it would not, and he needs to put society at ease by taking down the villains, which is exactly what his resolve is, atoning by becoming a selfless hero. He even keeps One for All a secret during this press conference despite knowing the truth behind it, as he doesn't want to cause any more hardships on both All Might and Deku. It's crazy to think back, during the beginning of the series, Deku stressed that Endeavor was the one person he wanted to make sure never found out about One for All's secret, and with good reason. But now the man has begun to change his heart and is actually putting others first for once. Post-war, Endeavor continues his relentless hero work, with much more of it now that a large number of heroes have hung up their capes. Even with the public disgusted with him, he pushes on, knowing that he must continue doing a job that has now become thankless. With all of this exposition on the life Enji Todoroki has led, can he truly be redeemed? Well, my answer to that isn't quite black or white. No matter what, Endeavor can't undo the psychological damage he did to his family, notably his wife, Toya, and Todoroki. He can't take back the abuse and the side effects of that abuse, whether it's your wife, pouring boiling water on your son because he looks like you, or your eldest child feeling so neglected he explodes and essentially dies. Even with the middle children, he can't take away their pain either, having to witness all of this. So if we just looked at it from that perspective, I would say no, he cannot be redeemed, because it wouldn't be for us to decide if he could be. It would be up to the family. But naturally, that isn't the full story here. Sure, you cannot take back your past actions, but you can learn from them and do better going forward. And that's something I've clearly laid out through this whole video. He starts off as this absolutely insane, egotistical man that only acts in order to ensure his desires come to fruition. But he eventually learned that this way of doing things was despicable, unforgivable, and does everything he can to do better. I mean, if you could never be forgiven or be redeemed, why would anyone ever want to attempt to be better? He makes attempts to ease the pain of his family while also being a dependable hero that acts selflessly instead of selfishly. With that taken into consideration, I think he's certainly on a pathway towards redemption. Now, we'll have to see what the future holds for Endeavor, as he will eventually confront Dabi again. But we also need to look at what he can do for his family on a personal level to earn forgiveness in their eyes. But with the current path he's on now, I think just maybe he will earn that and will be fully redeemed. But tell me, what do you all think? Do you think the path that Endeavor is on now will lead him to being redeemed despite his dark past? Or do you think that past is so dark that it swallows up any light in its path? Be sure to let me know what you all think in the comments below. Anyways, that'll do it for me today. I'm Mystic Sage, and I'll see you tomorrow with some more anime content. Before the video closes out, I just want to thank you so much for your support during this month of July. I'm uploading every day, and with all the different anime I'm covering, I know there's a little bit for everyone. Also, if you want a little more Mystic Sage, head on over to TikTok and check us out over there for more fun, bite-sized anime videos. I've also got an Amazon store where I sell tons of Pokemon and anime merch too, so check it out. For real this time though, thanks again for watching. I'm Mystic Sage, and I'll see you tomorrow with more amazing anime content.